Welcome to the F Word and Friends, and as always, we're talking about finance, but we like bringing different perspectives into finance. And there's this stigma around sports, men and women, that they're not working with the finances maybe the way they should. So we brought in an ex-professional cricket player, Farhaan Behardien. Thank you very much for joining us, and we look forward to speaking to you.
Thank you for having me.
Am I correct in saying the stigma that sports people normally don't manage their finances well? Am I correct in saying that? And what did you do differently?
Yeah, look, I think there is a slight stigma. I think what happens in the sporting world is there's a lot of money quite fast. If you play at the pinnacle, whether it's Springboks, South African cricket, maybe the football space, a lot of the other sports are still struggling to really get into the professional era. But those three big sports, fast money, lots of money, quickly, and you can potentially get caught up in a lifestyle. Big houses, fast cars, but as we know, the sporting world is quite, it can be quite short. Change of coaches, big injury. A guy that firstly comes to mind is Wade van Niekerk. He's top of the world. He played a charity touch rugby game and he tore his ACL. Never reached the heights that he once reached.
Yeah, like you say, it's very different from other careers where you gradually start low and you gradually build yourself up. You have to work to get a lot of money. Now you're quite young, you've got all this money. So yeah, it's difficult. Did you fall into that trap?
Well, fortunately, my contract wasn't that big in the beginning. I remember my first contract was about, I think it was 6,000 Rand a month. So I didn't fall into any sort of traps just yet. But no, you're right. Look, when you study, you start your office life or your job, accountant, doctor, whatever, lawyer. You kind of build it up and you have like a 40-year period. You could work in anything, work in insurance, financial advisor. You kind of build up and you have a salary and you retire at 60. Whereas a sports person's life, I was very fortunate enough to play for close to 20 years. Which is a long career, and I know a lot of sportsmen are going a lot longer these days. Technology, supplements, the way that they look after their bodies. I know like Faf du Plessis is still going, he turned 40. At the highest level, Imran Tahir is going, he's 45. Chris Gayle still played till he was quite old. So I never had the chance to fall into that lifestyle. I also played a way back, which just kind of gives away my age a little bit. But the life's expenses weren't as much in 2006, 2007 when I started. And my salary didn't exactly make me fall into that trap. But if you do reach the pinnacle quite early, quite young, Kagiso Rabada springs to mind. Damien Willemse springs to mind from a Springbok perspective. Those are young guys at the pinnacle and they are some of the world's best players. You have to have a nice little team around you to kind of manage your finances. Again, a lot of money very quickly. For me, I was just happy to be playing a sport. I didn't have too many expenses. Firstly, I never had a car when I started, so I didn't have to buy petrol. I stayed in the Titans apartment, so that kind of saved me on rent. And I was just so happy to be involved in playing sport. I had an ACL injury just before I signed my pro cricket deal, so I was a rugby player back in the day as well. Kind of a double sporting code, and it kind of took me out of the game for a year. So my story is a little bit different, is that I was just happy to be playing sport and trying to build a career. So the lifestyle never really had a chance to kind of get a grip with me.
Yeah, so one of my questions for you is, okay, so you started off with 6,000 Rand per month, and then, you start getting more money as you get a better contract, that contract size increases. And a lot of times, guys get caught up in, okay, now all of a sudden I'm making double, triple, quadruple of what I made. Now all of a sudden I can start splashing a little bit. I can buy that car, I can, go on that holiday, I can wear diesel jeans the whole time. How did you sort of manage to escape that trap?
I think I had such lofty goals. My goals were purely cricket related. So never really finance related. It was more about personal achievements in terms of goals. That kind of kept me on my straight and narrow. Now everybody has their pools and again, like you mentioned, flashy clothes, eating out, fancy car. So for that first 5 to 6 years when I was kind of building my career, because I quickly realized that if I'm not on the park and building up my stats and a portfolio and a body of work, I'm not going to get future gigs. I'm not going to represent South Africa. I'm not going to, attain some of those goals. So I treated myself like a one-man business in my cricketing sense. So the other stuff was all secondary. And you're right, my contracts did start to increase. I didn't earn 6,000 Rand a month for that period of time, but it started to increase slowly but surely. But I think when the penny really dropped is when I was 28 years old. So I started playing for South Africa. So a bit of an older soul that kind of joined that journey. I matured a bit older in terms of my career. Again, there are some guys outside of that, a little outliers, Kagiso Robada, Quentin de Kock, Abel Villiers, they started really young. I was on the other side, where I started a bit later. And when I started playing for South Africa, all of a sudden you're getting tour fees, there's match fees, you fly in business class, you're on TV all the time. But with all of that comes scrutiny. You're in the public eye, you're on millions of people are watching you on TV. One of my really first events was against India. Well, not my real first event, but my very first game was against India in Joburg, 31st of March 2012. And that comes with its own following. There's 1 billion people in India. So, they're all watching that game. All the players were playing Mahendra Singh Dhoni, Suresh Raina, Virat Kohli. So that was really like an eye-opening experience. And when I went to my first World Cup in that same year in September in Sri Lanka. So that's kind of when I thought to myself, oh my goodness, okay, cool. I've reached my pinnacle, which is the goal that I really wanted to do, was play for South Africa. If I really do well, I'm going to play another 7 more years to 35. So that was my initial goal. So 35 was like a benchmark. I suppose back then, 2012, we never really thought we were going to go much longer past 35. As it turns out, as I mentioned, guys are going a lot longer these days, post mid-30s. And so I bought a house, which was what you do. You try to get on the property ladder. Fortunately, Pretoria, a lot cheaper than Cape Town. These days. So I got into the property ladder, and my very first goal was to create an asset that I could utilize later on. So
was that your first investment, like at the age of 28, or could you have a different mindset, like I would say, from the rest of them? Or you said even at a young age you realized, okay, there's more to it, or my career is my first priority, and not fall into the trap. But like you said, 28, was that your first investment where you realized now you have to accumulate assets?
Yes, I think I've always been a good saver, right? So our parents, well, my parents, they never had a lot of money. They managed our family life to the best of their ability. And my mom did really well, and my dad did really well to kind of like shelter us from any bad things. And there's always a warm plate of food on our table, roof over our head, clothes on our back. And, and I really appreciate that. So from their side, and it kind of taught me that like you don't need a lot. So that was my goal for the first, when I started at 22 to like 28, those first 6 years, is that like, put in my career first, live a modest lifestyle, humble lifestyle, but my career was always first. And you're right, at 28, I was in a position after saving to put down a deposit on a house and then keep my mortgage low. And then my first goal once I got that through, is to pay off the house as quickly as possible. So all the bonuses that I had, so we had bonuses, commercial rights payments. When you go to a World Cup, there's commercial rights payments, there's prize money, there's tour fees, there's match fees. So you play a game for South Africa, T20, 50 over, you get match fees. You play SAA, there's match fees. So all of those extra monies that came in besides my salary was utilized to throw money into the house, to make sure the interest came down, to make sure I pay off the bond as quickly as possible. I was very fortunate. Again, fast money, quickly. I paid my house off in a year.
Gee. So you didn't upgrade your lifestyle, you're going to put the extra money into assets, which most people should do, or that's what we do, but most, you just raise your lifestyle, mostly. That's normally what happens.
Well, it's the easiest thing to do. I'm earning more money, I need to buy better clothes, I need to go forward. So my first priority was to pay my house off. I didn't want to have a mortgage. And then it was actually quite funny. I actually paid my house off, and I was driving a car that I really liked, and I thought, okay, cool, what's next? So I had to kind of ask my parents, or my dad. My dad is him and I are quite close. And I had to ask him, listen, is it okay if I buy a car? I had a financial advisor back in the day because I had no debt, I had no expenses now. Now I'm just like playing cricket, I got this house, I got a car, that's people's most expenses, right? Mortgage and car payments, whether it's 5 to 7 or 8 grand on a car. And, anything from 10 to 25 grand on a mortgage, that's a big chunk of your salary. Anyway, so I did buy a car, which was quite fine. But I managed to, look, I kind of structured my deals around, I had a gear sponsor, Gunnermoor, they were paying me a retainer. So effectively for 5 years, the fact that they paid me a retainer and the bonuses that came with my retainer, playing for South Africa, paid for my car. So again, my salary wasn't paying for my car. So even though I decided to buy a car, my salary wasn't, the payments and the mortgage weren't coming from my salary. It was coming from a retainer that I got paid outside of my salary. So that was kind of how I started to build that type of asset, and I knew that I needed to buy a car. It's just a lot of sportsmen, what they do is they get sponsor cars. And somewhere along the line, you're going to have to buy a car because your career is going to stop. So I decided very early on, look, I'm going to buy a car, because that's what normal people do. They buy a car and they have to pay it off. And I started to, once you pay it off, and I was fortunate enough, again, not just paying off the house asset, but to pay off the car asset, even though it's a depreciating asset and it's not great. But you still have a bargaining chip. So you use that as a bigger deposit for your next car. And then you use that again, once you pay that car off, you can whether you stay on the same level or whether you upgrade. So your car payment is not going into 7 to 9 to 12,000 to 15,000 a month. It always stays between 2 and 4,000 a month, but you're still upgrading the whole time. You know what I mean? So anyway, that's kind of what we thought about.
Yeah, but that's so funny because, people look at you now and, you're successful in your personal life and successful financially as well, and you're a very successful professional cricketer. But youngsters look at you, let's say, because you were driving a nice car when you were still playing. I can remember that BMW 2 Series of yours. But youngsters then look at that and they say, well, I want that and I want that now. In essence, I can afford that, so I want that now. Where you had a way different strategy to get there. And I don't think people always see that strategy takes a little bit of time. It takes a little bit of discipline.
Patience as well.
Patience to get there, because people just want everything right now. What I love about your story is the fact that you know so much about interest and paying assets off so quickly. Where did you learn that? Because we think it's just, people just have that, it's just common sense, but it's not. Not a lot of people understand interest. As a cricketer, I'm not saying you are or would, but how did you know that?
Look, I always just thought paying a mortgage is silly. Like, as long as, if you can pay for your mortgage with extra money outside of your salary, the interest is going to come down. I was fortunate enough to pay it off in 1 year, which is like astronomical. It's not a real thing, really, with a lot of normal people. But like, I just thought, like, what a experience. So there's another side to that, is that we never owned a house when we were younger. We always rented, right? So for me, it was more of as quickly as I wanted to pay it off, it was more of a pride thing. Like, it's a proud moment for me, right? To own something that was mine. So I spoke to some friends, and Faf was quite close to me back in the day, and a guy called Stephen James Musgrove, about they own a few properties. They were just a little bit ahead of me in terms of owning assets. So I chatted to them a little bit closely and kind of pick their brain and see like kind of what the story is. Because another thing about buying a house is that I kind of set down my roots in Pretoria. So that gave me the confidence to like, okay, cool, I've played for the Titans for 14 years. I wasn't going to buy a house and move like a year later or 2 years later. So for me to like really invest in this property, this one property, for instance, was like, okay, cool. This is going to be worth my while. I love Pretoria. That's where I met Francois, and now we both down in Somerset West, which is quite nice. So that is kind of like the idea. There wasn't really somebody to give me like a singular person that said this is the story. I was just kind of like very interested in my own story. Again, the game spits you out at any point in time, whether you 28. 30, I was fortunate that spat me out quite late. And I just thought to myself, at some point I'm going to have to work. At some point I'm going to not earn as much bonuses as what we used to earn, because that's what it is. I'm sure the Springboks They have a commercial rights payments, they do ads, they get appearance fees, plus their match fees, plus their salaries, plus whatever other content they kind of produce. Same with the Proteas. That's just extra cash. That's kind of flowing, and that is like what do you do with this, with your bonuses and that sort of thing. So,
But exactly on that point, what you do with that money, and obviously you guys have a lot of money, and people want to expose that. People want to expose that. Was there at some point where, and we see a lot of sportsmen fall for these syndicates or get rich quick or invest in this type of property? Was there someone that approached you, and was there a mistake that you did? Did you invest in one of these schemes, if I could call it like that?
well, I mean, look, to be fair, I've been pretty sound over the years. Pretty, I would say, moderate investor. Again, 28 came around. I started playing for South Africa, bonuses, first port of call, pay off the house. Okay, cool. Next thing, I bought a car, but the retainer paid for my car. So my salary, big chunks were just going into investments. So whether it was my RA, which was just a thing that was initiated through Saka, who I now currently work for, which is awesome. But then I decided to utilize money in different way, in different offshore portfolio, Investec, Sasfin. There was a 12J fund, so that was quite diverse.
So regulated funds, the well-known names.
Yes, it was Alan Gray. It was Coronation.
Coronation. Yeah.
It was all like the standard, like well-known blue chip companies. But again, it started at 28, and then it's been a 12-year program to now where I am, which is 40. And then I retired at 39, so just short of 40. And I was able to, after that 12-year program, to be self-sufficient for 4 years. No dip in lifestyle, without work. So that is also the other thing. I really wanted to not have any pressure. I always imagined that it would be really difficult, not about the money, just retiring from something that you've been doing and love for so long, for 20 years. Like there's a missing, you don't get up and go train, go to gym, on the cricket field. So for me, I needed to really like explore what that felt like at home. So again, going back, my house was paid off very early doors. And when I moved down to Cape Town, I could rent that out and get rental income. I could pay myself a salary when I retired. So I paid myself a salary, used the rental income to top myself up. I was doing some coaching in Cape Town, that topped myself up. So the salary that I was earning was actually kind of more than what I was earning at the back end of my career, which is actually weird. But I never saw that at 28. I hoped that I would just give myself a buffer when I retire at 35. Fortunately, I played for a bit longer, but it's afforded me a nice transition phase where finding myself in that space and seeing what I would like to do, whether it's in the coaching space. So I am busy studying. I'm doing my level 3 in the coaching. So I'm doing a BCom marketing degree. I'm in my 3rd year. So now I've kind of stopped paying myself. I've stopped the debit order to myself. It's quite weird getting one credit transaction from yourself to yourself.
Your own boss.
Your own boss, yeah. Fortunately, I was always on time, 25th of the month. But yeah, so I fortunately, look, I had good tenants, which obviously helped. That could have also gone a bit wonky where they don't pay on time or they don't pay for 3 months and then there's a story, I have to kick them out. So there potentially lies an issue. If you do have property and you have tenants, you have to really do some homework on who you're going to put into your property. So that's probably where some people fall flat a little bit, their investment properties. Maybe a few apartments instead of a big house. But, look, I was fortunate that there's not really anything where I kind of made mistakes. It's more again, I was a moderate investor, blue chip companies.
You knew it
there was
takes time.
patience,
Yeah,
yes.
you had the patience, which a lot of people, not just sports people in general, doesn't.
No, because we want fast results. The world is kind of instantaneous. Yeah. We want something that's like right now. We want to have the car now. Exactly the question is that some of the young kids saw me driving this BMW, but they also didn't understand. I was also 34 when I bought it. Yeah. They're 20 when they're looking at me, but I'm 34 when I first bought it. And so there's also lays a little bit of the difference, or I think I was 33 or something. Anyway, but so they think this is what I should be, but there's still 13 years to get to where I'm kind of going with that. So, and I think that's kind of like the message is that like, and I'm in the player service space on the admin side. We look after our players, all the professional cricketers, and part of we're doing our road shows going around the country as part of SACA, South African Cricketers Association. So my message from a practical perspective, it's about the patience, about the discipline, is to have a plan. I had a plan at 28, I had an idea. Fortunately, I had the discipline to kind of stick with it, and the 4 years at the back end after 35 was almost a bonus, really.
Yeah, so what would you say are the biggest mistakes that you see sportsmen make, especially with their finances?
Look, I know a few guys who've done restaurants, who've invested in the restaurant business. I think there's
but it sounds like a sexy idea. It sounds cool.
Even I had an idea for it. Not that I, fully committed to it, but even I had an idea for it. I know some guys lost their money very quickly, 400,000-500,000 quickly, into an idea which they thought a franchise business. They thought, look, they're just going to earn some passive income. I think upgrading your lifestyle, specifically the middle tier players. A lot of our people, they see the very top echelon of players. KG Rabadas, the Quinton de Koks, the Aiden Markgrams, they all think that is what we're going to be. We're going to play IPL, we're going to earn hundreds of thousands of dollars per tournament. We're going to play for South Africa. We're going to get a national contract with benefits, like big benefits. Don't pay for medical aid, don't pay for cell phone. It's like that type of thing, and the contracts are large. On top of your match fees, on top of your commercial rights payment, on top of the events, which has its own commercial rights payments, on top of the leagues that you pay, which is IPL, MCL, CPL, SA20, there's so many different streams of revenue. But those are and I did a percentage, it's like 4% of all our players. Are the very top echelon where they don't have to do anything. So it's the AB de Villiers, it's the Dale Steyn, it's the Jacques Callis, it's that type of people, So if that's the percentage, there's about 90 to 95% of the guys that are just middle of the road who have to start thinking about it. And what I found doing these road shows is that the guys are scared. The guys are scared. I was scared.
Of retirement?
No,
of
thinking
losing
of
their jobs?
Thinking of money.
No, they're scared of because I was scared of stopping playing cricket and having to do something else.
Oh yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. There lies it. What I've seen, and I was in that space, is thinking to myself, I'm gonna have to do a 9 to 5. I'm gonna have to work in construction. I'm gonna work on a mine. I'm gonna have to go to an office. It's that fear. There's a fear there of actually. Yeah.
What would your advice be? Because we see it with people that's retiring. I mean, that's a lot older, 65. But even then, they struggle to adapt now just sitting at home, because normally you had a purpose. You had somewhere to go to work. You had colleagues that you're going to see. There's a purpose in life. What advice would you, you've been through that period. Luckily, financial-wise, you were sound. But the emotional side of it as well must also be very difficult. So what advice would you have to someone that's kind of nearing to the end of their career?
Yeah, look, I think while you're still in the space, while you're still fit and healthy, and while you're still kind of earning your salary in your preferred field, your preferred job, and specifically for sports, whether it be rugby, football, whatever, cricket, is to explore. Is that the advice would be that what you're doing currently doesn't define you. You should, and I think once you start to explore it, even though it's a bit fear, there's a fear, and you're a little bit scared to go outside of it. I think my advice would be to jump there while you still have some sort of security, to find out what you do like, to already find out. So I had an idea when I was going to come to the end of my career that I was potentially going to do some contract work for SACA, and work in some capacity in that space, and I really wanted to affect the game in terms of a coaching perspective. So I'm and funny enough, immediately when I retired, I was drawn into the University of the Western Cape by my mentor to coach, and just to coach their third team. It wasn't a paying job. He just like, come and coach. What are you doing? You're going to be bored. Mondays and Wednesdays, and I'd take the team on a Saturdays. And I didn't know anything. He just come, do it. Cool. Okay. Saka, literally 2 weeks later, they were like, look, we need to do a research project for us, some contract work. So I was like, okay, cool. So immediately after I was retired for 3 weeks, I was kind of doing the things that I thought I was potentially going to be doing. So now the full-time position at Saka came a year and a half after. But the coaching I'm pursuing a little bit further to, I'm doing my level 3. So I think it's just having an idea of what you'd like to do. So you have to explore. So the advice would be, while you have some sort of security, you have to explore other avenues post when you potentially think it's going to cut. So, I mean, I suppose people retire at 60, all 60 as an average. Up until 60, between 55 and 60, or whenever, it could be earlier, you have to explore something that you can potentially do from 60 to the next journey of your, you know what I mean? Like, while you have some sort of security in that regard, because once you get there, what happened to my parents, they got there quite abruptly. And then the next year or two was a bit challenging mentally. Not financially, they were okay, whatever, but it's just that mental challenge was kind of, and it's exactly what you're saying. It doesn't necessarily have to be in sport. It could be when people retire at 60. It's like what do you do from 60 to 70. You know what I mean? So yes, I think, so for me, I was kind of exploring that avenue, the coaching, the Saka stuff before I retired. But the financial security gave me the opportunity for it not to be pressing.
Yeah, because most people immediately need to just take the best next thing, and then they go into something they don't like or they're not good at.
Exactly. And if I had a mortgage to service, if I bought a house at 30 and I was still doing, and I still had mortgage payments, for instance, when I retired, I'm going to have to go find something that's going to pay me, like a high-paying job, you know, and that necessarily won't happen because I will start, even if I've studied, I would have to start on an entry level and then work my way up. So my whole idea was whatever salary I earned when I retire, all the big ticket items would be taken care of. So whether the car, the house, yeah. So then that kind of also played a role. So not just from an emotional perspective, like kind of figuring out what I want to do. The financial security gave me, like, just, again, as I mentioned, I had 4 years worth of buffer area, you know, so, which fortunately, I mean, I only used a year of it type thing, so.
You spoke about the fear aspect, and I think for a lot of people that sort of inhibits them from going into action, because at some stage, you're going to retire or you're going to get cut as a sportsman. Unfortunately, that's how life works. So you know the end is in sight, and for some people, they take action. What actions did you take to set yourself up for success after sport? So we've spoken about the finances. What other measures did you take to make sure that you'll be okay after sport?
I suppose it sounds really weird, but like for me personally, how I feel confident in myself and my space, and the actions that I took is to keep being active. So I train, I train 4 to 5 times a week. It really gives me a sense of purpose in terms of like my physical well-being. Yeah. So sounds something so small, but I always had a routine in cricket where you get up, you go to training, you have lunch, you go to gym, you sleep, and then the next day probably the same thing, and then there'd be a tour, you play your games. But there used to be this routine of physical activity. And when I retired, I thought, well, that is something that I really enjoyed and gave me confidence. So I transferred that into a gym kind of program that I'm constantly on, and I started taking up golf, which is probably a good thing after my career, because it's a very difficult sport. I wasn't going to play a very difficult sport while I'm playing a very difficult sport for my career. So in terms of like shifting my attention, from my career and my life in that space, in that world, I shifted it to my physical activity and a golf, a sport that I can. People played for years and still can't, do well. But that's something that.
Cruncher.
Yeah. So it's something that like that kind of those kind of actions to set me up to like, okay, cool, if I can look after my physical well-being, let me take on a sport, a hobby, which is now it's going to become.
But I mean, you also set yourself up very nice by studying a lot.
Yes.
You're no slouch for a little bit of study.
Yeah, so look, I dropped out of varsity twice. When I was 18, I went to UCT, I dropped out, I did a BA LLB. I dropped out to pursue cricket my first year. By hook or by crook, my second year I got in by the skin of my teeth. I was on probation. I needed to pass 7 out of my 8 subjects at the very least to kind of keep studying. And my second year, what happened? I dropped out again because I wanted to pursue my career. Now, fortunately, then all the advice I've ever received is don't put all your eggs in one basket. I did put all my eggs in one basket. I put it in the cricket basket, and unfortunately for me, it kind of worked out. And that's why I needed to really, again, what you were saying about success is I really needed to take the opportunity of my career and really make something of it. Towards the end of 2000 and COVID year, so like 2020, I knew I was going to come to an end at some point. Like it was without a shadow of a doubt. Like it's coming. COVID's coming, my body's speaking a little bit louder every morning, getting more difficult to wake up. It sounds weird, but it's just becoming a little bit more challenging. And I did a short course. So the reason why I told you the story about the dropping out is it ties into my next story is that I was afraid to complete my studies when I was young. I didn't have a plan. I started and I stopped. And then I started my second year and then I pulled out. And then I was like, oh my goodness, I need to do something. So I did a short course. I did a sports psychology diploma. It was an 8-week course through Stonebridge Associations. And I was like, okay, cool. That was nice. I got the certificate. And then I did a sports management course through Get Smarter program at UCT. That was a 10 or a 12-week program. Got through that. And I was like, okay, cool. Like, you know, you can actually do this. Like, you know, so I did something, so that you're asking about the steps and the actions I took. So I did smaller steps and completed some things to give me some confidence while I was doing my physical ability, like my physical like attributes, keep working on them, keep working on your well-being, your physical well-being. And then I started studying a degree, which obviously is a lot more meatier. So it carries a lot more weight. I still believe it shows discipline, it shows work ethic, it shows that you can learn material and adapt it. Because a lot of my stuff now is a lot of essay driven, and research. So the degree bit is more of a challenge to my younger self for dropping out.
So what degree are you studying now?
A BCom marketing management degree. Yeah.
But I think, thank you very much for joining us. And I think that sums it up like I just said at the beginning, have a plan. You have a plan with finance, you have a plan after your career. And once you retire, you also have a plan. Put things in your diary, have a schedule, keep busy, give yourself that confidence.
But doing some smaller things, take some smaller things, give yourself some confidence, pat yourself on the back, and then maybe increase a little bit, and then increase a little bit.
It's awesome. I love that.
Thank you very much. And it's great to hear that there are success stories for people after sport. Not all of them are working bad with their money, but thank you very much. Hopefully we inspired some of the people out there. Thank you. Cheers.